All right, let's get into it. Today, we are cracking open a case file on what has to be one of the most wild, most persistent conspiracy theories in all of pop culture. We're talking secret societies, a pregnancy that might not have been real, and a child who was seemingly destined for greatness from the moment she was born. Of course, I'm talking about Blue Ivy Carter. Okay, so let's just rip the Band-Aid off and start with the most extreme claim out there. I mean, we're not just talking about some little rumor here. This is a full-blown theory that says Blue Ivy isn't just the daughter of Beyoncé and Jay-Z, but that she's some kind of successful experiment for a shadowy group that secretly runs the world. So you have to ask yourself, how in the world did we get here? Where did this all begin?
Well, it all starts right at the beginning. To really get why this conspiracy has such legs, we have to rewind the clock. We've got to go back to the months right before and right after Blue Ivy was born. Because for the people who believe this theory, the entire thing is built on a foundation of pure suspicion. So let's just walk through the timeline, okay? August 2011, Beyoncé gives us maybe the most iconic pregnancy reveal of all time at the MTV VMAs. The whole world is watching. We're talking a record-breaking 12 million viewers. It was a massive cultural moment, right? The world was absolutely thrilled. But then, just a couple of months later, the whole story takes a very, very strange turn.
And this is the moment that lit the match. It's a clip from an Australian TV interview. Beyoncé sits down, and as she leans forward, her baby bump it looks like it folds. It crumbles, like it's made of fabric. I mean, you can imagine this clip went everywhere instantly. Now, her team came out and said, look, it's just the dress, it's the fabric bunching up, which, could be true, but it was too late. For a lot of people, that seed of doubt was firmly planted. The question became, was she ever really pregnant? Okay, and then we get to the actual birth at Lenox Hill Hospital, and the security, it was something else. We're not just talking about a private room. Reports said they rented out an entire floor for over $1 million. They were covering windows with black cloth and tape. Things got so intense that other parents started complaining. One dad, whose twins were in the ICU, said his family was literally blocked by security from seeing their own newborn kids. Now, the official story was just about privacy, but you can see how this looked, right? For the theorist, this was all the proof they needed. This wasn't about privacy. It was a total cover-up to hide the arrival of a baby born via surrogate.
So you might be sitting there thinking, okay, this is wild, but why? Why would anyone even come up with a theory this big? And to answer that, you have to realize that Blue Ivy wasn't just born to a couple of famous singers. Nope, she was born into a full-fledged modern-day empire. And that brings us to Exhibit B, the motive and the unbelievable power behind the Carter name. Let's start with her mom, 35. That's how many Grammys Beyoncé has. That's not just a lot. That makes her the most awarded artist in the entire history of the Grammys, period. When she drops an album, it's not just music, it's a global event. The whole world stops to listen. And then you add her dad, Jay-Z, to the mix. Together, their net worth is, it's around $3.2 billion. Think about that for a second. That's not just rich celebrity money. That's a level of financial power that puts them in a completely different league, a league that very few entertainers have ever even sniffed. And if you need a concrete example of what that kind of money looks like, here you go. $200 million. That's what they paid for their home in Malibu. It was the most expensive home ever sold in California. See, a house like that isn't just a place to live. It's a statement of power. And it's that kind of untouchable power that really gets people's imaginations running. It makes you wonder, if they can do that, what can't they do? But here's what's so important to understand. They didn't just get rich by being famous. They built this whole thing as owners. Beyoncé created Parkwood Entertainment so she could own her music, her films, everything. And Jay-Z, after getting turned down by basically every major label, just went and started his own, Rockefeller Records, and changed the game. The point is, they aren't just playing in the sandbox. They own the sandbox. So when you have that much power, that much control, that's when the whispers start. And in their case, those whispers connect them to probably the most infamous secret society of all time. So let's open up Exhibit C and talk about the Illuminati. Okay, so quick history lesson. The original Illuminati was a real group back in the 1700s in Germany. They were real, but they were shut down. The conspiracy theory we hear about today is that they never really disbanded. The idea is that they just went deep underground, and now they secretly control everything: governments, banks, and especially entertainment. And this is where things get really interesting, because the so-called proof all comes down to how you look at it. Take Jay-Z's famous diamond hand gesture. Officially, it's the sign for his record label, Rockefeller. That's the public story. But to conspiracy theorists, oh no, that's the all-seeing pyramid, a classic symbol of the Illuminati hidden in plain sight. And once you start looking for it, believers in this theory see it everywhere. Like at Beyoncé's Super Bowl show in 2013. She throws up the sign, and bam, the power goes out in the stadium for 30 minutes. Coincidence? They don't think so. You see it in their music videos, even one filmed at the Louvre. And then there's the name itself, Blue Ivy. People have actually tried to decode it into this really dark acronym: Born Living Under Evil, IVY. So all of this, all these theories about her parents, her birth, secret societies, it all eventually leads back to the person at the very center of it, Blue Ivy herself. Because while all this talk was happening, she was actually growing up, right, in front of our eyes, and dealing with a kind of pressure that most of us can't even imagine.
I mean, from the second she was born, the public scrutiny was just relentless. Can you believe that when she was only 2 years old, someone started a petition demanding her parents comb her natural hair? A 2-year-old child. It was just this awful early sign that every single part of her life was going to be picked apart by the public.
And yet, despite all that pressure, just look at her resume. She was on a Billboard chart literally 2 days after she was born, thanks to a feature on a Jay-Z track. By the time she was 9, she had a Grammy. A Grammy! Now she's doing voice acting in major movies, and she's been on a world tour performing in front of stadiums. So the question becomes, is this just a kid who's a natural-born prodigy, or is this the result of a very, very specific, powerful upbringing?
You know, nothing tells you more about who she is than what happened on the Renaissance tour. She's just 11 years old, and she gets up on stage with her mom. Her first few shows, they weren't perfect, and people online were just brutal. And Beyoncé said that, yeah, Blue Ivy read those comments. She saw what people were saying. And what did she do? Did she quit? No way. She doubled down. She trained like crazy between shows, and we all got to watch in real time as she went from this nervous kid to a total fan favorite, a polished, confident performer. It was amazing. Okay, so we've looked at all the evidence, the weird circumstances of her birth, the sheer scale of her family's empire, and her own unbelievable journey. And at the end of it all, we're really left with 2 totally different stories, 2 competing ways to explain everything we've seen. So, how do you explain it? How do you explain a child with this much maturity, this much talent? Well, you've got a few options. There's the conspiracy theory that she's a programmed heir, groomed from day one for some elite purpose. Then there's the more practical view. She's a product of privilege. With that kind of money, training, and pressure, you're just forced to mature way faster than anyone else. And then, of course, there's maybe the simplest answer of all. She's just a phenomenally talented kid who happens to have phenomenally talented parents. And so, in the end, it really all boils down to one question. Is Blue Ivy Carter a programmed prodigy, created and molded to carry on some kind of secret legacy? Or is she just an incredible kid, a product of immense pressure and privilege, who figured out how to not just survive, but thrive in the brightest spotlight on Earth? The final verdict? Well, that's up to you.